The best Linux distro for beginners. Now, a lot of people are going to disagree with these options, especially my first choice. These are my top 4 picks for what I wanted to cover. Now, they are all easy to use and to install. They all have great community support. Now, there are other great beginner distros out there, and a lot of them would basically work just as well or almost as well. Now, my first option, not a huge surprise, is Ubuntu. Now, Ubuntu gets a lot of criticism these days, but I still think this should be listed first. Now, this is one of, if not the most commonly used distros for desktop use. And since it's so widely used, you will find lots of support and answers for just about anything you would want to do. It's one of the default choices when a company or product wants to support Linux. So if a product wants to make a Linux version of their, if a company wants to make a Linux version of their software, it's probably going to support Ubuntu by default and sometimes Red Hat, more historically Red Hat. But in any case, Ubuntu Linux is also widely used in the server world. It's commonly used and well supported on cloud systems like AWS, for example, and basically all the other cloud systems. And yeah, so it's widely deployed in the enterprise world and used by companies like Google and Meta. Now, it's based on Debian, but it's a little bit easier for beginners. And it's backed by an actual company, Canonical. So, for better or worse, there are good things about that and bad things about that. You can actually buy support. Now, another thing, Canonical makes their money from the server world and has deprioritized desktop use. It's still pretty good though. It started out as a distro oriented towards making Linux usable and easy for desktop use and just your regular average desktop user. Now they're making their money from the server world, and that's been prioritized. Still great on the desktop though. Now, Canonical, so they've done several things over the years that don't always make users happy. Now, today, probably the biggest complaint is the use of snaps, which a lot of users hate. This is controversial though, but yeah, a lot of people dislike them and for good reason in a lot of cases. Still controversial. Now, if you want to use the same distro at home as you use at work, Ubuntu might be a great choice, assuming your company uses Ubuntu at work, which there's a good chance. If you're using Linux at work, there's a good chance you're using Ubuntu. If not Ubuntu, Red Hat. Now, there are a lot of other distros being used. Some companies use Debian, and there are other distros out there being used in the corporate world, but probably Ubuntu and Red Hat are the top 2 distros in use. So whichever one of those, if you happen to be using Ubuntu at work, you want to use the same system at home, so you can just be that much more familiar with how to fix problems and stuff, might be a good choice. So it doesn't hurt to be familiar with Ubuntu. It's a great place to start, and it's also a great reference point to compare with future distros if you decide to distro hop and try out other distributions. So the next distro worth mentioning is Linux Mint. So Linux Mint is a terrific distro. It's based on Ubuntu, and it should have most of the advantages of Ubuntu, and it's close enough to be basically compatible, but not completely. Now, it doesn't include snaps by default. That's a major plus for a lot of people. Now, Linux Mint is the distro that was the birthplace of 2 desktops, Mate and Cinnamon. Now, these were created as a response to changes in the GNOME desktop that many people don't like. So one of the ideas behind Mint was to create a desktop that is similar to Ubuntu, but doesn't force users to use the new GNOME by default. Now, a lot of the design choices they were making with GNOME some years back were kind of controversial, and a lot of people want a more traditional, practical desktop. And that's kind of what Mint wanted to stick with. So Mint also used to include things like proprietary codecs, which weren't included by default in Ubuntu. Now, this is a non-issue these days in Ubuntu, but it used to be kind of a thing. You had to manually go and install those. And yeah, now you don't, but that was one of the advantages in the past of Mint over Ubuntu. So one of the main ideas of Mint was to provide something that just worked and worked really nicely without a lot of silly hassles and just works right out of the box. And so they did a great job at this. A lot of people absolutely love it. So if you want something like Ubuntu, but basically better in almost every way, Mint is a great choice. Still, if you want to stick with the more default starting choice, you might want to go with Ubuntu. So either one will be a great choice, especially if you're an absolute beginner. If you want some of these improvements, maybe go with Mint. Now, the next choice, which I think is actually probably, I have less experience with this, but the next one is Pop! OS. And I played with it a little bit. It looks great, has a ton of awesome features. Highly recommended. You might want to just start with this one too. This is also a great place to start. You could skip the other options and just go with Pop! OS if you want. So this is yet another Ubuntu-based distro. So Linux Mint was Ubuntu-based, and Ubuntu's Debian-based. Pop! OS is also Ubuntu-based. So Pop! OS is created by the company System 76, mainly to be bundled with the computers that they sell. Anyone can also download and install Pop! OS on most computers. So yeah, System 76, they make desktop computers, tablets, they make laptops, all sorts of great hardware that's meant to run Linux by default, meant to be Linux compatible. And they've created their own distro called Pop! OS, and it's based on Ubuntu, but they've made a lot of really nice improvements, and it's really hard to it's hard to ignore. They've done some great work there, and it's an actual company that runs it. They're running it to have something good that people can run on their hardware that kind of competes with like Mac OS and Windows. So they just wanted to provide something really good by default that people can run on their hardware that they sell. Now, basically anyone, you don't need to use their hardware though. You can just download Pop! OS and install on basically any PC, just like you could with Ubuntu or Mint. Now, Mint, now Pop! OS includes support for loads of software for STEM and creative professionals. There's a focus on that. And for media production, they also have great gaming support and Windows compatibility. So you can run a lot of Windows games. They make it easy to do that. Now, and they have a ton of other stuff, right? So another thing worth mentioning, they include the Cosmic Desktop. Now this is a customized version of GNOME with loads of great features for productivity. They have a lot of neat, slick shortcuts and a lot of nice stuff that just makes it really, really nice. Huge improvement, I would say, over default GNOME. Now that's what they're including right now. Now, right now it is, I guess, kind of late February in 2024, and there's talk about there's a new version of Cosmic Desktop that is not based on GNOME. It is the new Rust-based Cosmic Desktop. It's close to alpha as of February 2024. They're talking about releasing the alpha for this, and apparently it looks like you can already download versions of this for other systems like Arch Linux and stuff like that. They're making this new desktop, this new Rust-based desktop, available for other distros for people to install there. And you can try it out there. But right now they haven't switched over to the new Cosmic Desktop yet for Pop! OS. But they're talking about the alpha coming out really soon, and a lot of people are really excited about this. So this Cosmic Desktop alone is so slick and nice. I would say this is a reason to choose this distro, whether you're an advanced user or a beginner. It's an easy OS to use, and it has this amazing desktop that just look at the shortcuts and stuff, and you'll be having a good time. So also worth mentioning, no snaps by default, and it does include apt and flatpak. So apt, so basically just like Ubuntu and Mint, it includes apt and it also includes flatpak. Does not include snaps like Ubuntu does. So the next beginner distro I'd like to cover is Fedora. Now, Fedora is a pretty solid choice with a lot of great support, and it is corporate backed or at least sponsored. So by by Red Hat, and I guess by IBM now. I guess you could say that since IBM now owns Red Hat, I guess you could say ultimately you have IBM behind this for whatever that's worth. But yeah, definitely corporate backed. Fedora is basically, I guess, what you call like the upstream. New packages get tested out in Fedora. Once they're more stable, they make their way down to Red Hat. Red Hat being seen as, or I should say Red Hat Enterprise Linux. They're all Red Hat. I would say they're all Red Hat distros, whether it be Fedora, CentOS, or RHEL. They're all Red Hat distros, right? Now, if you like working in a Red Hat environment, pick one of these. Red Hat being more stable for in general use for servers, but normally on a desktop you want the latest and greatest and new updates faster. And Fedora makes more sense for that. It's not as stable, but it gives you newer stuff sooner, which is more optimal for a desktop. So yeah, pretty solid choice, corporate backed. It's a free Linux distro from Red Hat, and or just supported by Red Hat anyways. But it's unlike Red Hat Enterprise Linux, where you kind of have to pay for it or subscribe to it, and you can download some for free. With Fedora, you can just download it like a normal Linux distro. Now, it's basically, yeah, it's a less stable, more desktop-oriented version of RHEL, basically. Now, it's great if you want something that's very similar to RHEL and you want to keep things somewhat consistent with what you would expect from Red Hat. So you might choose this as a desktop if you also run RHEL or Red Hat Enterprise Linux servers at work. So just like if you're running if you run Ubuntu on servers for your actual job, it doesn't hurt to run it as a desktop at home. But if you are running, if you're running Red Hat on your servers at work, it doesn't hurt to run Fedora on your desktop at home. So you'll be more familiar with the types of things that you would expect from a Red Hat based system. You'll know right away how to troubleshoot things and fix things. It's going to make your life easier at home. It's going to make your life easier at work. Of course, you might want to do the opposite, follow the opposite of this advice if you just want to switch things up and see how things work in a different distro. But yeah, those are my top 4 distros that I would say you could start with any one of these. They're all easy to install, loads of great support, big community for all of them. They're great places to start. So any one of these would be a great place to start. I'm kind of leaning towards Ubuntu and Pop! OS. Ubuntu because it's just a really good default choice. You get familiar with what the default is in so many situations, and you'll be using the same thing that's commonly used in the cloud and in the server world too. And it's a great desktop OS, but Pop! OS looks so amazing that I almost think that might be the better choice. So if I were to pick a top distro amongst these 4, I'm really torn between Ubuntu and Pop! OS. So that's basically what I have to say about the best Linux distro for beginners. If you found this interesting, you might want to give me a thumbs up. If you found it helpful, you might want to hit that subscribe button so you don't want to miss out. We have a lot of other great tech content coming out. I'm doing a lot of Linux command videos these days. I'm trying to do one for basically every Linux command I can possibly come up with. I'm trying to do at least one video per command, just cover every single Linux command, doing a lot of Linux command stuff, we do a lot of Linux stuff, a lot of server stuff, electronics, Raspberry Pis, 3D printing, networking, all sorts of great stuff you don't want to miss out on, robots, AI, stuff like that, cryptocurrencies even. So a lot of good stuff you don't want to miss out on. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. And also, if you know something I don't know, or maybe you have your own opinion, your own favorite distro, maybe you disagree with me, definitely leave a comment down below. I want to know what you think. And yeah, as always, hopefully you enjoyed watching this. And yeah, so thanks for watching, and we will see you guys on that next video.